Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's live. Hopefully, my mic is working here. Yeah, gosh, exciting times as always. So, if you're in game right now, make sure you're in the theater. We've got some energy there. I actually pulled aside, someone was asking, which world is there a party? Every world, any world, you can go to the theater in Terravilla. You just walk a little bit north and to the side. You'll see a big theater building, says tickets now on it. Go in there. You'll get energy with the popcorn flying everywhere. And then I didn't do that. That was Luke. Luke is in the background airing out your dirty laundry. Okay, and how do I get energy? You just need to be in the theater. So let's bring up Luke. And yeah, throughout, if you have any questions, please throw them in the YouTube live chat. And we're always paying attention and pulling them aside. So,
Yeah.
oh, look at
Hey,
your
everybody.
setup.
Can you hear me all right? Yeah, it's a new
Yeah,
setup. Sweet,
nice.
sweet. Yeah, I also have the theater being streamed behind us too. So this is live. That's all of you guys in the theater. Yeah, excited for this live stream today and excited to go over some of the stuff. So, if you guys have been following along, the last month has been so hectic and busy. And also at the same time, like not much has moved too. We've gotten a lot of stuff ready. We're about to make some big changes and releases. So today, what I wanted to go over was kind of to give you guys an update on the timelines of when you can expect some of these bigger changes and give you guys an insight onto when we're launching guilds because it's actually going to be a bit sooner than I think we thought, even too. So we'll confirm that. Me and Heidi maybe should have checked before the final date on when guilds is going to release, but it's looking pretty good right now. We're in like the final QA stages. We have all the pieces that we needed. We made some big announcements last week on how it's going to change a little bit when it comes to the rollout. So we'll just reiterate all that stuff. Basically, we'll go over what's going on with guilds, when you can expect it to be released. It's either going to be this week or really early next week, is what I can hint at right now. We'll continue to update all of you. And then we'll also kind of go through some of the chapter 2 changes too, because chapter 2 is the thing that we've been working on for so long. It's the thing that we're most excited about internally at Pixels. All the changes it's going to make to basically everything you're doing inside of the game. We're really excited about it. And I think we're going to preview some of these changes today now as well too. Some of the spec upgrades, some of the changes to like interiors, houses, all of that. We'll kind of show you guys and run through what you can start to expect because the stuff that we're about to release for chapter 2, it's actually a really significant update. It's probably going to be the largest update that we've released at one time inside of Pixels. There's a ton of stuff. Essentially, it's spec upgrades, changes to resources, the guild integration, changes to NFT land, changes to like the economics. Basically, the entire way that you play Pixels is going to change. And transparently, the target date for the release of chapter 2, I think we have a much better idea of when we're ready to release it. Since it's such a big update, we want to be really careful. We want to QA it, test it, play test it, do all of these things and make sure it's kind of smooth before we get it out. And we want to get some of these features in together. If you've been following us, what we like to do is we like to release changes one by one sometimes. But since these are such big changes to the economics of Pixels and how you guys play, we wanted a lot of these changes to go together at once. So it's looking like chapter 2. We're shooting for a release date of around like, I'm going to say April 8th, looking like the first or second week of April. So it's really not that far away, about less than a month, which is super exciting. Do not come for my head if it like delays like another week or so after that. But it's looking pretty good. Like we have most of the changes ready. We'll show some of them today. It's exciting and it's going to change basically everything inside of the game. So it's been a bit of a content lull. If you guys follow us, we release content really quickly. Once we have chapter 2 out, there's some more changes to systems and other things like that we'll be releasing too. It's super exciting. So yeah, just follow along because Pixels is about to completely change. And I think today too, we'll probably go over some of the ethos. Kind of, I want to drill you guys and then like kind of help you guys understand what the plan is for the next 6 months, but then also the next 2 years to 5 years too. We've been doing a lot of like longer term planning and thinking at Pixels lately of like, okay, how do we actually take Pixels from a game that can probably hit like 2 to 5 million DAU? How do we take it from like the 5 million DAU range to 50 million DAU range? Because that's a whole different jump. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that we have planned. And, it's also really experimental too, right? It's a group effort between us and the community to figure out what we do in the next stages. So we'll kind of go through the ethos, give another reminder of all that. We'll preview some chapter 2 changes and we'll go over guilds as well too. So I think the thing to start with is guilds. So we announced the release last week. We got some community feedback and we made some changes to the release of guilds too, right? Let me just pull up the list of changes that we made. I tweeted about it on my Twitter. Maybe we can pull that up as well too. But with guilds, this is a really big feature that we're releasing, and it's a different type of feature than things that we've released before. We see it as high risk if we don't execute really well. And working with the community, the guild leaders, and the players is actually extremely important for this to go smoothly. So we announced the initial rollout plan last week, right? We got some feedback from you guys, and rather than just ignoring all of you, we listened to you, right? We made some changes to how we're going to roll it out. So the biggest change that we're making is we want the launch to be more fair. We had some community members basically point out to us, rightfully so, that the guild launch, how we were planning on rolling it out, wasn't going to really be fair to other sizes of guilds. The other thing we wanted to work on too was to help guilds break down their guilds into smaller guilds as well. So we'll kind of explain the thinking there and what you can expect there. And yeah, the other thing too is we want to make sure that everybody really, really knows what's going on with guilds. Like, I want everybody in a guild or who's purchasing a guild membership to understand what the role of guilds is inside of the game, to understand potential risk that you're taking when you join a guild, and to properly understand how the bonding curve works too, because it's an interesting feature. It's really cool, but it's also something that you should be aware of as well. And then, yeah, the last thing is we also really want to prioritize making sure that real guild members get into the guilds. So there's some lessons that we learned from FriendTech, and a lot of our community members inside of Pixels actually participated in FriendTech at some point too, and they had some insights there too. We want to make sure that bots don't ruin the guild experience. We want to make sure that whales don't ruin the guild experience for the real members who want to get into the guilds that they want to get into. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance and depth there. So yeah, maybe we just run through this tweet really quickly, and I can just kind of read it along with all of you. So the plan and the change that we made to the guild rollout is we gave 100 free memberships to the top 20 guilds. That was a promise that we made way back in like November when we first announced the guild release membership. And yeah, we're still going ahead and giving out those free memberships to the top 20 guilds. So if you notice though, there are guilds that have a huge wait list. And there's some guilds that have like 7,000 people in the Discord. It's crazy and it's really awesome to see. Like the excitement around the TIFF guild, the excitement around Moku, all these other guilds, it's amazing. However, in our game design and how we're actually trying to structure guilds, we actually probably don't think a super guild is great inside of Pixels when we're talking about like one guild having like 7,000 members. The whole point of guilds and the reason why we're adding the bonding curves is so that guilds will actually have to be competitive. So if you look at some of the guild memberships right now on the top 20 guilds, it costs 101 pixel to join these top guilds right now because that's how the bonding curve works. Essentially, for every single new member inside of a guild, it costs one more pixel to join it. So if there's 100 members, it's going to cost 100 pixel to join the guild. If there's 200 members, it's going to cost 200. The whole point is it gets more and more expensive to join with the more members inside of the guild. So this is good and bad, right? If you're in these top guilds, that's great, right? If you were able to get a membership inside of there. But if you're a member of TIFF and you're trying to think about how do I get into TIFF if it's too expensive, the whole point of what we're trying to help these guilds facilitate in the top 20 is breaking down into sub guilds. So sub guilds is going to be a really interesting concept. Essentially, you can think of them as separate guilds that these top guilds help facilitate. And we're really leaving it up to the guild leaders to figure out how they want to facilitate these sub guilds. But the whole point is like, some guilds, they'll probably do like a bunch of different strategies. We'll probably see some guilds like TIFF do rankings inside of their sub guilds. So they might have like TIFF tier 1, TIFF tier 2, and I think that is how TIFF is doing it, TIFF tier 3. And you'll actually internally inside of TIFF, this is not sanctioned by us, or this is not like structured by us. We're just giving them the tools to do so. You'll have to like work your way up the TIFF rankings essentially if you want to join the TIFF guild. So TIFF tier 1, it might be really hard to get into because it might be kind of expensive if there's a lot of people that want to join TIFF tier 1, right? But the whole point is you'll start going up the tiers inside of that TIFF guild internally. And that's why we've also given them some memberships to distribute how they want to. So, I actually have no idea what's going on inside the governance of TIFF, but that's something really important to note when you want to join a guild. The way that the guild is run is up to the guild. And, you probably want to join a well-organized guild, right? Because if the guild isn't organized, then it's going to be a little messy, right? So what I can say is like the top 20 guilds, we've been helping them do this. We've been giving them some guidance, but we're really leaving it open-ended. The whole idea behind guilds is we just want to give you guys tools and we want to give you guys a playground to kind of experiment with how you guys want to run this. And part of the guild advantage when you join a guild is how well they run, how well they distribute resources back to you. And they're going to really have to figure out the value that they give back to the players to join the guilds rather than us as pixels, right? It's really up to them. So it's cool because we're almost kind of experimenting with like micro DAO governance in a way, right? Like these guilds right now, they're run by leaders, but eventually maybe they'll decide that they want to break out into like more structured governance, things like that. It's totally up in their hands. We've given you guys the tools as guild leaders to do that. These guild memberships are ERC 1135s. So, we might even start to see guilds, open up a snapshot.org account and do guild voting, things like that. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be a bit of time for these guilds to kind of figure out what they do, how they structure things. But the key point is it's up to them. And we're giving you guys, in-game reasons to join the guild as well. So a big thing too is we want to learn from the lessons of some of the SocialFi projects that have come before us. A big thing is if you followed FriendTech and some of the other SocialFi platforms that came before what we're doing here, a big issue inside of those was that they would either have bots front run a lot of the initial memberships to make it too expensive for other people to join in later, or they would have somebody who wasn't actually a part of the guild buy up a lot of memberships and then dump on them. So what we introduced before we wanted to go live with guilds now, we just did this in the last week and the team got it together, which is amazing. We introduced guild whitelist. This is optional for the guild. The guild does not have to have this turned on, but what they can do is they can actually control member by member who is able to buy a guild membership. So this really helps facilitate the initial starting point of guilds. So, a big guild like TIFF, they'll probably have it tiered, right? So I'm not sure how much governance they're doing now and like how much they're organizing now. Again, check in with the guild that you want to join first because some of these guilds might actually have to approve you to buy these memberships. So they'll get their good guild members in first. And then if they want, they can turn off the whitelist at a certain point. This one helps protect the real users who want to get into the guilds. It also gives the guild the tool to do this as well. So the guild will actually be able to control who can buy these memberships. And at some point when they feel comfortable, if they want to open it up to everybody, then they can do that. The other thing too that we were really worried about was making sure that you guys understand what value the guild is providing to you. And the easiest way to frame that right now is kind of the amount of land that the guild has assigned to it. So one interesting part of this guild system is that you can assign an NFT land, one of the farmlands, to a guild, but you can only assign an NFT land to one guild at a time. So over the next little bit, I think this feature is releasing in the next day or two. You'll start to see on the guild dashboard the lands that a guild has assigned to it. So you'll get a much more clear picture of the actual value that the guild might be able to provide to you. If you see a guild that has a ton of members and only 2 lands to it, you maybe might decide that it's not worth joining that guild, right? So we want to make sure that we have that information visible to you as a member so that you can make the best decision possible to join the right guild, right? So that's an exciting feature that we're adding. The other thing that we're doing is a YGG Super Quest. And what that YGG Super Quest is going to look like is basically it's going to give you a tutorial as a player and as a member of what it actually means to join a guild. So you'll get kind of a rundown on what a bonding curve is. You'll get all the 101 basically on what guilds is, what SocialFi is, how it all works, so that you have a much better understanding of what you're getting into before you join these guilds. The next thing that we're going to be doing is we're not going to be opening up the selling of memberships for a little bit as well too. So we'll basically have buy only on guilds for a couple of days. And then, I think we're thinking about a week after the initial guild release is when we'll turn on the selling of memberships. That way the guilds have enough time to facilitate, distributing the free memberships that we gave them, to do all the whitelist stuff without the pressure of selling these guild memberships on them. So they have some time to self-organize. So yeah, that's really, really important. And just note that this also gives us time to adjust the bonding curves if we need to. So I heard some people worried about us adjusting the bonding curves, screwing people over if we do that. If you're not familiar with the bonding curve is, again, it's that equation that we decide on how much a guild membership is worth. So right now we have it as every subsequent guild membership costs 1 more pixel. So if you are joining a guild, if you're the 100th member, it will cost you 100 pixel to join that guild. What we might do is if we aren't really hitting the targets of members per guild that we want, there's a chance, this is not guaranteed, that we do a split on the memberships. So what that would look like if we do that is essentially we would adjust the bonding curve equation to maybe be half. So we will maybe do like half a pixel for each member. And if we do that situation, what we'll do is we'll airdrop every single person who owns a guild membership an additional one. So you basically get double, but then your sell back is half as much. So, you can do what you want with that. You could give your guild membership to a friend, or you could just have two if you really wanted to. So that's the big change to that you need to expect. So again, I think our target release date is either Thursday or Monday. We'll get back to you guys on like when exactly that looks like, but it could literally be as early as tomorrow that we're going to be opening up the purchase of guild memberships to the top 20. And then the idea is once we open up the top 20 memberships, we'll open up everybody about 2 or 3 days after that. So if we launch the top 20 buys or top 20 guild shards on the buy side on Thursday, that would mean opening it up to everybody, like every single other guild on Monday. So guild leaders, get ready. If you have a guild inside of the game now, what I would do is I would turn on the whitelist feature immediately when we release that so that you don't have random people buying your memberships right away, unless you want that, because it's an option to you, right? And then you can whitelist the people that you want inside of the guild and go through that too. And then the other concern that we were hearing for a while is it being too costly to set up a sub guild. So let me explain to you guys what we are doing with new guilds that are forming. So when you form a new guild, we actually don't charge any fee to create a new guild. All we make you do is we make you pre-mint like 10 to 20 guild memberships. So depending on how much that is, I think if we were making you pre-mint 20 memberships with the current bonding curve, that would be something like 400 pixel. We might lower that requirement amount to something like 10, which I think would be more like 20 to like 40 pixel. So starting a new guild is not supposed to be expensive. It's not supposed to be cost prohibitive. It's really just like making sure that you pre-mint some of the guild memberships so you can actually give them out to the people who join your guild. That way, nobody basically front runs your own guild. Like what we don't want is we don't want you to make a new guild and then somebody buy up all your memberships and then you have no memberships to give out to the people who actually want to join your guild. So we make you pre-mint a few of them just so you have them in your wallet and then you can give them out how you want. And then even if you don't have the whitelist turned on, you still have like 10 to 20 guild memberships to give out. So yeah, this rollout, it's really important for us to get it right. I'm kind of glad that we delayed it a week just to get all these features in. And I want to give a big shout out to the dev team who implemented some of these features so quickly. I thought it was going to take us a bit longer, to be completely honest. So it's cool that we might get this out either tomorrow or on Monday. And yeah, guilds are basically about to release for that reason. So again, note, guilds are going to make a lot more sense in chapter 2. We want to kind of get the first part of this out. We didn't want to release the Socialfy feature and chapter 2 at the same time because it's going to be a little bit of chaos as we get these guilds ready. So these guilds will have a couple of weeks to kind of settle into everything before chapter 2 releases. And then when chapter 2 is out, it's going to be a pretty big deal to be in a guild. So again, chapter 2 release date, we're shooting for like, I think April 8th is our target date. Could be a little sooner, could be a little bit later. Who knows? That's just how things go here, right? And that's like that's the deal that you're making with Pixels when you come and play with us, right? We build really quickly. We like iterating. We like trying things out. Sometimes our dates move back for that reason. Sometimes they move forward. It's always a little unpredictable, but that's kind of the fun part too. And I mean, honestly, this is also the alpha that you guys get when it comes to like the greater Pixels ecosystem by coming to these AMAs. Like you guys have a huge advantage coming to these AMAs against people who don't really know what Pixels is or aren't following as closely. You get to make the best decisions when you get, on these AMAs and you get to listen to all of this, right? So these game changes are huge and we're super excited about them. And yeah, I guess maybe we can split up this AMA a little bit too. Maybe if you saw any good guild questions, we can answer those and then we can move on to some of the features that we're going to give.
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you're asking them on the YouTube live chat itself. Actually, you can also comment on Twitter now. New feature. Love that. So you can comment on the tweet as well. Okay. Let's dive in. So the main questions and like kind of concern I was seeing is that there's two. Let's start with the first one. Free to play players. How are they going to participate in this if they don't want to or can't afford to buy a shard of a guild? What is gameplay going to look like for them?
So number one, what I'll say is the whole point of these guilds is, and the bonding curves too, is we actually don't want super guilds inside of the game. We want guild competition. And these bonding curves are a really good way to enforce that with the incentive design too, right? Like, I don't think Tiff was super happy at first when we explained to them what we were doing with
Mhm.
sub guilds, or some of these larger guilds too. But I think everybody's on board and it makes sense to them now too, where there's not going to be a super guild. What we don't want is we don't want you to feel like you have to spend 1,000 pixel to join a top guild. We actually want to like make it really fair for the smaller guilds to be competitive, and that's what this bonding curve achieves. Where you actually probably want to join a guild that has like a land or two and has less members because you'll probably get more out of that guild than a huge guild that doesn't have the same resources per player, right? So that's going to be some of the decision making that you need to make. And also note that this is kind of why we gave you guys airdrops, and this is kind of why we gave you guys like why we have like play to earn rewards inside of the game too. Like we give you guys Pixel, right? And this is kind of your chance to use it inside of the game to get some advantages as well. So note that before you just like get rid of all your Pixel. Like we give it to you because we want you guys to use it inside of the game, right? And there's plenty of opportunities to use it now that will help you get an advantage inside of the game. And this is just a fun feature that you can add on too. But if you don't want to participate in anything to do with guilds, that's totally fine. You can still play the game that you want. We'll actually show you guys some of the spec upgrades and the things that we're doing with that soon because the single player gameplay is going to get more interesting as well. The changes that we're making to chapter 2 are going to change the game up a ton, but there's still going to be new gameplay for the players who don't have land or who don't join guilds as well. It's kind of a balance between mixing some of this, right? The guild gameplay I would say is like later gameplay. What we're introducing inside the pixels now is we're introducing much better game progression where your gameplay is going to basically vary the longer that you play inside the pixels. There's going to be more things to do the more that you play pixels essentially, and that's kind of the whole point. Right now when you play pixels, your day 1, you have to like get through the energy crisis, right? You have to like kind of figure out your stuff. But then like after like 2 weeks, your gameplay doesn't really change too much. The task board helped introduce some new stuff and like your gameplay is more varied than before. But now with these changes to chapter 2 and guilds and all these other stuff things, like your gameplay is going to look basically different almost every single day. And that's kind of the point. What we want to do is we want to basically create what we call like an infinite game. This is the concept I'm thinking about a lot. Like I want to create infinite games with all of you guys and we want to make it so the gameplay gets interesting all of the time. Like we're gonna throw in like random twists a bunch. We're gonna throw in like things that just like mix up the meta a good amount. And the guilds to stay on top of it, the players to stay on top of it, are gonna be the ones that have the advantage essentially. One, what this accomplishes is this accomplishes just more interesting gameplay. It rewards players who are more strategy oriented, who are more social, all of this. And it's also much more bot resistant when we do this as well too. When we start to mix up the meta, when we start to mix up all the gameplay. Yeah, a lot of the key focus on chapter 2 is adding more bot and cyber resistance, not just through the methods that we do like reputation, bot prevention detection, the banning that we do of bots, the data scraping, all of this kind of stuff. But now it's also introducing cyber resistance into actual gameplay and game design. I was just actually on a podcast with Double Tap the other day. It's with Shima Gaming. I think Delphi is like slightly involved, or at least like some of the heads of those funds. And we talked about that a lot. The bot thing is a huge issue in Web3 gaming. And really, how I see it is there's like a couple of different strategies that you can think about when you think about bot resistance inside of a Web3 game. Yeah, it's funny because the space doesn't want to talk about it. And I think some of the space is a little ignorant that haven't actually released a Web3 game yet of like what it actually takes to make a game bot resistant inside of Web3. I kind of see 2 high level strategies. I think you either have to do very hard KYC on your users to make your game bot resistant, or you have to do the strategy that we're taking, where there's basically like 4 or 5 things you need to think about. Um, I talk about that Warzone bot that we see happening all the time. But yeah, bots inside of Web 2 games have gotten insane. I don't think people quite know how good AI is at playing games now, but AI can basically play any Web 2 game very competitively. AI can play Counter Strike, they can play Warzone, they can play like extremely competitive shooters that you would think are skill prohibitive for botting, but it's actually not. So basically, any Web3 game that adds an incentive structure is going to need to think about their bot strategy. How these Web 2 games are doing it is they're doing like kernel level access to your computer to make sure that you're not running anti cheat. That's not really viable inside of a Web3 game, in my opinion. Especially if you want to go mobile, especially if you want to go in browser. Like you can't get kernel access to a computer. And honestly, how many of you would want us to have kernel access to your computer? Probably nobody. So that's not really an option in Web3 gaming in my mind. So then the option, if you really want like 100% bot proof tech, is you kind of need to do like very hard KYC, whether that be collecting IDs, things like this, or the eyeball scanning WorldCoin. So I think in the long run, in like a couple years, when we start to see more competitive Web3 shooters or things like that release, they're going to be doing some of that. We've chosen to go the other route, where we think that's actually not the route that is going to lead to mass adoption inside of Web3 gaming. What we instead do is we do like probably like a 3 or 4 pronged approach to bot prevention and detection. One is, kind of a data science approach, where we'll look at data inside of the game, we'll look at bot behavior and activity, and then we'll do retroactive bans. This is really normal in MMOs. You'll have ban sweeps every couple of weeks inside of a game like World of Warcraft or RuneScape or things like Diablo. We do that too, and then you'll sometimes see angry botters inside of our Discord who are complaining about getting banned. Sometimes we do get real users too. Apologies for that, but it's just part of the process, right? But yeah, we do retroactive bans, and we have like preventative features on the front end too. I will say the preventative features for most games, or honestly any Web2 tech, they don't really work. CAPTCHAs, reCAPTCHA, CloudFront, things like that, very little end effect to actually reducing a bot problem in any Web2 application. I mean, if you look, Twitter has all this stuff. Like, most games have all this stuff. If there's an incentive, if somebody wants to get past it, they'll do it essentially. So it puts a little bit of a dent. It makes it like a bit more cost prohibitive for some bots, but that doesn't work really. So then what you have to think about too is you have to think about the next level. Okay, so then how do you actually make it so that botting is not as incentivized? The VIP passes that we have are a really good way to do that. Essentially, the reason that we have VIP is you have to put up a little bit of pixel in front, right? And it puts up like a small economic barrier. So to create 1,000 accounts is actually quite expensive for a bot. And then what we can do is if these bots do choose to buy VIP anyways, the bots are taking a much bigger risk, because if we ban these bots or if we catch these bots before they're able to extract enough out of the game, then they actually come out in the red economically, and there's less economic incentive for them to buy. So we do that, and we're about to start to increase some of the. I think somebody actually just asked about this in the chat too, about withdrawal requirements. But yeah, we're
Oh,
about to start
yeah.
to slowly increase some of the withdrawal requirements when it comes to reputation as well, to kind of combat this in the short term. But then the next thing that we have to do too, because you can't just do those two things, because those two things are not strong enough to like remove all bots from the game. You also have to think about game design too, if you're not going to go the full KYC route. So chapter 2, a lot of the changes that we're making are with this in mind. It's how do we basically create a system where our players help us, identify the best users, and how do we create a system that is a bit more cyber resistance in this way too. So the biggest change in chapter 2 is to change the resource generation, right? Where the resource generation is going to change drastically. Right now, when you come into the game, when you go to a plot of soil, you can farm on anybody's plot of soil, right? And here's how it practically works. If you're a bad actor who creates 1,000 accounts, if anybody can farm on a plot of soil, if you have 1,000 accounts, you can create 1,000 accounts to plot on one farm of soil, get 1,000 resources. Chapter 2 changes that completely. So in chapter 2, only one person can farm on a plot of soil at a time, right? And if you have 1,000 accounts, you actually have no advantage that way, right? So the interesting part now is the guilds are going to be the kind of gates of the resource generation on the higher tier resources. And on NFT land, the higher tier resources will be available essentially. So we'll show you guys the spec upgrades that we're about to introduce. We'll show you some of the interiors. There's some really cool stuff that we're doing inside of specs. And we'll also start to show you guys like some of the changes that we're making to the land as well too. But essentially we're adding in like different tiers of resources. So if you have a spec, your very first spec will give you tier 1 resources when you farm on them. You'll be able to upgrade your spec, and you'll be able to get some of the tier 2 resources. I think you'll be able to upgrade it one more time, get some tier 3. And then to get the tier 4 resources, which will be turned in for more pixel, you'll have to go to NFT land. And the guilds are going to be the ones who facilitate most of these resources on the NFT land. These resources are going to be a lot more scarce. They're going to be harder to get, but the reward will be bigger because they'll be able to be turned in for more pixel. So there's some really interesting growth loops there if you kind of understand what's going on. So essentially, we're almost decentralizing like the bot detection and prevention, because if a bot is on top of a guild land, and if a bot is on guild land, what they're actually doing now is that bot is taking away resources from the guild. So it's actually not good for the guild if there's bots on top of their land, right? They're going to have to self-police that a bit. They'll have to basically remove the permissions of these botters themselves if they want to actually give out resources to their members or to make their members feel like it's fair for them. So there's some cool stuff with that. But Yeah, that's basically what we've been thinking with that whole thought process, and this is why we're so excited about chapter 2. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with Pixel is how our economics work is there is an expected amount of pixel generation each month, right? We actually have like complete control over how much pixel is going into the economy. But if there's bots inside of the game, what that means for the players is that's less pixel per real player. So for us, that's actually not good. What we want to do is we want to get more real players inside of the game. We're excited to use the pixel token inside of the game who are like the best players inside of pixels. Basically what that does for us is it helps the ecosystem grow, right? And we have an aligned incentive with us and the players to make sure that more pixel is going to more real users. So the guild changes, the chapter 2 changes, it's all aligned around that, right? Like we want to give more pixel to the best players inside of the game and create a progression system for all of you to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the
So,
thing.
um,
This is a good
yeah,
comment too.
that was
So the
another.
game's becoming more fun for rich people. No, completely the opposite, and that's like the whole point of this basically. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create better economic systems where we can actually reward the players who are enjoying the game the most and who are progressing through the game the most too. Like there's actually pretty clear progression steps. If you're a new player and starting with nothing, if you're dedicated, you can probably work your way up through everything too, right? And that's what we want to achieve. Like what we want is we want players who have never played Pixels before to get as far as possible through the game. That's better for everybody, right? Like the whole point is we want a lot of people who are having a lot of fun playing the game, and we want to create systems for you guys to get there. So that's the intention with this, and that's like basically what this team is effortlessly working towards, because that is what we need to do to make sure that Web3 gaming play to earn works. So there's kind of two phases to this, right? You have to add in like a bit of bot resistance and silo resistance, and you have to get really good at reward targeting too. So you have to make sure that the incentive structures, the progression systems, all that are there to have like a good funnel for new users to become like long-term retaining users.
Okay, I think we've talked about guilds a lot. So if you have more guild questions, please continue to throw them in the chat. But let's like run through a few other questions just to break it up a little bit. And then obviously, yeah, we can hop back into guilds if you guys have more questions. I just saw like a really simple question here. What was it? Oh, okay. Yeah. So why does the board in Terravilla say different hours versus the Discord events? Okay. First of all, I apologize for any miscommunication. We have a calendar in game and obviously on Discord as well. And I'm also posting Discord times. I would say, okay, the reason, let me preface this. The reason all of these might seem off is that North America just went, what was it? We went forward an hour, right? Yeah, spring forward with daylight savings. And then in a few weeks, I know most European countries will be doing the same. I know there are a lot of countries in the world that do not have daylight savings. And I honestly wish we didn't because it is a pain in the butt. So, yeah, if the times are seeming off between different services, first of all, I'm sorry. There's not much I can do. I'm following my time zone as the source of truth, which is Pacific time, or we're -8, right? UTC -8. Maybe we're -7 for like a month and then it changes. See, it's a mess. It's a mess. Okay. Your source of truth will be when I post on Discord because I use a code that will automatically show your time zone in the announcement. So I think that's probably the best one to follow over the next like month or so. But yes, our times will have just moved an hour. So okay. And yeah, we do have an energy party tomorrow. So figure out your time for that. I did post on Discord, so go look. You're gonna want to be there.
Sweet.
Okay. What other questions are in there?
I think maybe let's just preview like what we're planning with spec upgrades. This is actually like a very
Yeah,
big
yeah,
part of the
yeah.
progression
That's
really
okay.
quickly.
Do you
So
have it handy?
yeah, I do have it handy.
Okay.
So here,
Amazing.
I'll share screen right now.
There was a sneak peek in our Pixel launch video, so some of you might have already seen this.
Yeah, so here's a new spec. This is going to be like the beginner spec upgrade. So essentially, we're going to change the look of all your specs. They're going to be looking more like this, and this is actually the same size as your current spec. So if you've upgraded your current spec right now, don't worry, everything will stay there. It's going to become square because we have some cool stuff that's coming with that. So new spec will look more like this. This is exciting. what you're also going to start to see is you're going to see a new house inside of your spec too. So not only is there going to
Mhm.
be changes to the like exteriors of all your specs, but there's going to be interiors too. So let me go to that interior really quickly, because we have like some pretty cool stuff coming with all of that. Yeah, so basically, you'll have a new spec, and you'll actually have a new interior inside of your spec too. This will be the small specs interior. You'll be able to purchase new upgrades or like purchase new things here. You'll get some info on all of this, and there'll be a new progression system inside the specs. Um, so that's spec one. Um, you'll be able to upgrade into a bigger sized spec as well. Here, let me pull this one up really quickly.
And with that, there will be bigger houses. Now, some of you guys are probably looking at that house thinking, "That's the same size as the NFT land houses." Those will be changing as well, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, so we'll show that too. Here's the next size spec. So yeah, specs, you'll be able to upgrade. You'll take a little bit of pixel, you'll be able to make them bigger, right? All the stuff on side of your spec, it'll stay the same, and basically your spec will get a bigger perimeter, right? It'll cost like a little bit of pixel to do that. But then the cool thing too is when you get into the spec, the interior will also increase. So let me show you what this interior looks like too, because the house gets bigger too.
Okay, and we just got a really good question. So when upgrading specs, can we choose the land type? No, they will all remain land. So green.
Yep. So on the medium spec, you get like another floor inside of your house. Your spec house gets bigger. There's more stuff to put in and do here. We'll start to like basically tease around the gameplay a bit with that more as well. But yeah, spec house will get bigger. This is the medium one. This is the tier two. Here, let's pull up that tier three now. This is what the tier three house looks like. It's even bigger than that. A third floor that you'll be able to get to. Or yeah, I think is this
I feel like that's the NFT one, isn't it?
maybe no, I think the NFT one might be bigger. Let's see. Yeah, no,
Anyways,
this
you
is
guys, you get the gist. They're gonna be bigger, they're gonna be more exciting, there's gonna be more opportunities to decorate and just more utility, right? Because if we're looking at a guild, right, they need a spot to hang out, right? And obviously there's gonna be their different lands, and so the houses need to kind of match that. Okay, someone said when pink land. I would love to know. I'm still
yeah.
waiting on that.
This is the tier three spec. So yeah, this is like I think you guys get the gist basically. Like there's going to be more progression for the people who don't own the NFT land, and essentially you'll be able to work your way up too. So if you're a single player, if you don't want to join a guild, like this is kind of going to be the gameplay that you participate in, like getting a better spec that you can show off more. It'll actually be more useful and more productive as well. So before I get all these NFT owners very upset, like let's show you guys what the interior inside of the NFT land will look like too, because you guys also get some new interesting upgrades as well when we release chapter two. So in chapter two, your NFT land size will stay the same, the small and large. They're still significantly bigger than specs. And also note that you're going to get access to exclusive industries and resources that will only be able to be placed on the NFT land. So basically, as you upgrade the spec, you'll get access to more industry types that you can place on top of that spec. So you'll start with like tier one resources on your tiny spec, right? You'll be able to upgrade into bigger and bigger specs that will actually also be able to have like higher tiered industries on top of it too. So right now, it'll be like if you played Minecraft, it's like on tier one specs, you'll have access to like the like tier one resources like Minecraft. The tier one would be like wood, right? On tier two, you'll be able to produce things in Minecraft would be like stone. Tier three would be iron. Tier four would be like diamond, right? And that's kind of the same way that we're doing this progression. So NFT owners, don't be scared. You'll get access to the better resources, and then you'll also get new interiors inside of your house as well too. So these interiors match what you have right now. Don't worry. We have some cool stuff coming too, but then the NFT land actually gets like quite interesting spec houses. Like what we kind of want, if you're an NFT owner, is like we want this to be a base for your guild or for the players who come to your land a lot. Like this is where the people inside of your community are going to start to hang out, right? So these interiors are huge. They have some cool stuff. They still respect the old farm, and yeah, there's some fun stuff planned too here. Let's see. Oh yeah. This is huge alpha actually. So the whole intention behind these like NFT lands is we want to start to create like places where your community has special access and it has like a reason to hang out. So right now we have the community sauna, right? We're actually adding in more things like that on top of the NFT land. So if you own an NFT land, this is just a small NFT land house. You'll actually get your own private like pool and sauna for you guys to recharge energy. And the whole intention is essentially like we want to create more spaces where your guild and the players on top of your land have like reasons to hang out in essentially. So it's really cool stuff coming, right? Like this is sick. And this is just a small NFT land house. Let me get the large one going now too. I'll pull that one up.
People are freaking out. I love it. I'm so excited for this stuff. Even when I saw it yesterday, it looked different. So this is just great.
Let me see if I can pull up this large one. Yeah, I think you guys get the gist basically. So you get access to like all these things basically. Basically more reason to hang out inside of an NFT land. And like we do want this to be like a community center for all the people who are in your guild, or if you are just a single landowner, you don't have to assign your land to a guild. You can have the same permission systems that you currently have now. Like if you want to get it to like an NFT owner or just like your friends and whitelist them, it's totally an option too. So guilds are not, they're not necessary if you own NFT land, but it's an interesting new addition, right? And we're going to start to explore more and more of this as we go into chapter 2. So big changes coming. Again, like there's more of this too. And this is kind of the whole intention behind chapter 2. Like we are changing up the gameplay a lot. It's not going to be the same type of game that you've been playing so far, but we really think this will make the game more interesting, more fun. So expect things to be different because it's going to be. And we're gonna have to work with you guys a little bit, right, to make sure that we're making all the right changes. So I hope there's some trust between us and you guys on like what exactly that looks like and how we can do it best. But yeah, there's some cool stuff here. I think this is a huge leak actually. But yeah, even inside of the NFT land, there's some other stuff that we're adding too, right? Maybe some access to some other stuff, changes to the road, all of that. So yeah, get excited because like I can confidently say like the area and the direction that the game design is going. I personally have never been like more excited and like confident in the direction that we're going. Obviously, there's going to be some changes that need to get made. We'll be really iterative. We'll still do the same stuff that we've been doing for the last 2 years, right? But now we're in a we're in a pretty cool spot, right? Um, in terms of like where we're going with pixels, again, the whole game plan here is we are going to be spending basically the next like 3 to 6 months really iterating and making sure that we have all the core parts of this game down. So it's still experimental, right? What we're doing here is still very much getting feedback from all of you. We want to make the best game possible with the community. We want to listen to all of you and make the changes that you guys think that we need to make. So, continue to give us feedback because even stuff with the skill thing, right? Like if you guys talk on Twitter and Discord and all this kind of stuff. Like we listen and we see it. Again, be nice when you start to talk about pixels because we really actually do just want to make the best game possible, and it is with all of you, and we actually really do care what all of you guys say as well. So if you guys give feedback on things you don't quite think make sense, or if you guys have ideas for things that can make it a lot better, like feel free to say it because I will see it and I will read it, and we'll probably take a lot of the things you guys say back to the community and the drawing board to make sure that things are even better. So continue to
Absolutely.
like yeah, continue to give the feedback, continue to like say everything because again, some exciting stuff coming. So the whole plan again is like 3 to 6 months. We're gonna be doing this iteration phase like constantly. We have some metrics that we're looking at when it comes to our success and like what we want to be seeing. The things that we'll be looking at are things like retention inside of the game, like how much like what the funnels look like. So like we want to make sure that like a new player has like a really clear path to like long retention and like gets through the end game basically. So we'll be looking at these numbers and metrics a lot. We'll be looking at like how people are using Pixel inside of the game. We'll make sure that it's in like a good healthy spot. We'll be looking at like how much guilds are getting used and all this side of things. And once we're pretty confident about our numbers, that's when we plan on actually like releasing some of the growth levers that we have. Like right inside of Pixels right now, it's interesting. We're growing organically, which is great and real DAU is still increasing, even though there is a bit of bot activity inside of the game right now. We're not shy to say that these chapter 2 changes hopefully will make a big dent into that. But our goal is like real DAU growth in like 3 to 6 months, honestly. Right now, it's just kind of like a happy coincidence that DAU is growing, but it's not our focus. We actually really want to make sure that the game feels good, plays good, that we hit the numbers and metrics that we want. And then about like 3 to 6 months when we feel good about that, that's when we start to introduce some of the growth mechanics that we've had in things like the play to airdrop. So things like referrals, things like you know, incentivizing sharing to Twitter, all of this, and that's when we expect like the real growth to hit. Our kind of goal is hitting like 5 to 7 million DAU inside of like this current Pixels game, and then while we do that, the goal is essentially thinking about like the next 5 years as well too. And our goal for the next 5 years is like we want to go again from like the 5 to 7 million DAU range, which I think is totally possible inside of this Pixels game loop, to like the 50 million. And how do we get there? It's not as straightforward, but we're probably going to be doing like a bunch of experiments over the next year to figure out like what works for us. There's been like debates internally of like, do we go more of a publisher model where we start to give out pixel incentives for other people to use pixel inside of the game, or do we start to build out multiple titles? And we'll probably run a bunch of experiments in all of these methods. Basically, you'll probably see some cool stuff in the next like month or two where we might actually have some other games joining like the Pixels ecosystem and using Pixel as some kind of like burn or sync inside of their own game. It's a good aligned incentive, right? Because we have a lot of users who play our game, and if we have another game that wants to use a Pixel token, it's great for everybody, right? Like we might do some co-marketing with them. We might give them some more users, and then it creates more Pixel syncs as well too. So the other thing we'll start doing too is like we'll start to release maybe some prototype games on the side as well, that also use a pixel token. So this is like more like the 1 to 2 year stretch where we're going to start some of this now and working on it now. We probably won't be so, well, yeah, we'll see how public we are about some of those experiments that we run. But what's great is that Pixels is in a pretty strong position right now where we can start to put more resources into like the long-term ecosystem expansion as well. So a lot of exciting stuff here. And yeah, this is really just the beginning. You know, token launch was a month ago. It's been a whirlwind is what I can say. I think the team is in a much better spot after just even a month where, there's better service stability. We've scaled like a lot of our, internal comms and things like that. The team will start to grow a little bit more over the next, 3, 4 months too. We'll get some more help in some of the areas that we need it as well. Once everything's stable, that's when we really push on the growth. And then we also start to think about long-term ecosystem growth as well. So yeah, exciting stuff. And let's see if there's more questions too, because we still have some
There
time.
are. I'm gonna run through a couple of unrelated to guilds questions. So when UGC approval, so yeah, there's been a bit of a pause on it. If I'm being completely transparent, it's just due to team capacity. Someone also said, will we be lowering the cost to mint UGC? Yes, that's on the list of to-dos. So it will come. We will lower it before we start approving new UGC items. So don't worry about that. But yes, there has been a little bit of delay, just team capacity. Kydro, yes. So you guys might have noticed there is a little new building on the beach in Terravilla South. So Kydro is a new game launching on Ronin, and they have a free mint. I think it starts in a few hours. And if you get your hands on that free mint, it will give you a new avatar in Pixels. So I will be minting. That's all I can say. Okay, I brought this up. It's just funny. Did you really forget to turn off the energy party yesterday? Yes, I straight up did, and you're welcome. Okay, it happens occasionally. Transparency. I've had a really bad headache, like almost a migraine the last few days. And so when I do these live streams yesterday, we were doing the Twitter space. I just needed a little break afterwards. I will probably need one today, but I will not forget today. Yeah, I will turn it off. But the reason I actually wanted to bring this up is to remind you all, we do have an energy party happening tomorrow. I think it's 5 p.m. Pacific. I would just look in the Discord announcements and you can see your time zone using like a Discord code thing, right? So I would go there for your source of truth because you're going to want to be there. It's a big energy party celebrating Moku Season 2.
Here's a good question. Single soil per player will be quite discouraging for solo players. Hopefully not. That's why we're putting more like resources into the spec upgrades, right? Like your spec is your personal sanctuary. You can also invite other people to it if you want, but we expect a lot of like the solo players to be farming on their specs a good amount, right? But yeah, I mean, if you do want to progress through further end game, that's when you probably will need to join a guild or you own your own NFT land, basically. But that's kind of the point, right? We want to globally limit the higher tier resources so that it's a bit more bot resistant and silo resistant, and then you have to participate in the social gameplay. So there's two options if you're a solo player. If you want to get access to like the end game and higher resources, it's join a guild or it's get your own NFT land. But there's like tons of progression for you guys there, right? Like the 3 tiers of spec upgrades, it'll be pretty significant.
Yeah, this reminds me of this question we got earlier. So, how does a single player farm blue farm resources if they're not a part of a guild? And then this actually leads to another question: what about lands that are not part of guilds? Right. So, not every land will probably be a part of a guild. So those are just free for all, right? Good luck, because I feel like they're going to be under high demand. But
Yeah,
that's
like
also the really
Pixels
fun
owns like
part of joining a guild, right? Because then you'll have an easier access to those resources. So there's a lot of incentive there to then participate in that social gameplay. But yeah, you still be able to if you can find the right lands.
yeah, Pixels has like 150 land right now, and we'll just leave those open for everybody, like 1 to
Yeah.
150. It'll
Although they
probably
don't
be
have much soil on them.
yeah, okay, I'll
They only
we'll
have default soil.
we'll help with that. We'll help with that.
um, yeah. Okay. Okay. We have a few more minutes here. So let's see. Oh, okay. Someone said, "Can we get a free avatar just like yours?" Okay, so this is like alpha, I guess. I think we mentioned it before, but we will be revamping the default Pixels avatar. You know, when you join the game, you get to like select your avatar, and then you can always go in and change it. We've had some funny things in there when we used to have the mayor system, and people would like change their head to a chicken and whatever. That whole system will be revamped, and it's going to be really fun because we've got some cool ideas. It's not just going to be as simple as like select whatever you want. We're also going to maybe have some opportunities to, you know, buy new outfits or hairstyles and stuff like that. Like there's going to be more gameplay around it than just like a simple picker like it is right now. So it's coming. And that was, I don't know if we've said that publicly yet. So that's coming. I don't have a date or time estimate really for you yet, but it's in the works.
Good questions so
Okay.
far.
All right. Let me see.
Somebody asked about the upgrade costs and specs. So that's still like we're gonna tweak that a little bit. I will say, I think with the spec upgrades, we're gonna try something where we're gonna let you downgrade a spec and get the pixel back if you want. Like we'll probably try some stuff like that. We want to experiment with different forms of Web3 monetization. And the interesting part about some of the Web3 stuff is, yeah, there's almost like there's things that we can do that kind of feel like staking, or like maybe have a similar end effect to staking, but aren't staking. And one of the concepts we want to explore a lot more is the idea of upgrades that can be deconstructed if you choose to leave the game or something like that, basically. So you put a bit of pixel in, but you can deconstruct it for like, 8 or 9 pixel back if it's a 10 pixel upgrade, things like that. So I think we might try that with this land, or if we don't roll that out immediately, like we might add that in like a little bit later. So there is some stuff like that that we're gonna like basically try out and see if it works because that's pretty cool, right? You don't necessarily need to like even like spend your pixel. You just kind of like stake it in an in-game way. And it's not staking, but it's kind of is, right?
Okay. And I think this would be like a good one to kind of end off on. So, how do we know which guild is the best to join? I'm still confused about choosing which one. So, this was actually some feedback we got on the guild release, and part of the reason we paused. And in the meantime, what we're implementing is you will be able to see which lands are pledged to that guild. Beyond that, their governance style, what kind of culture they have, that's going to kind of be like a do your own research thing, right? So I would recommend maybe hopping in the Pixels Discord server and just asking around, being like, what are the different guilds? Like, what are you guys joining and why? Tell, just have those really cool discussions. And then you can go as far as joining some discords of different guilds to like get a sense of what they're like. Yeah, it is a good question.
I mean, yeah. Also, follow some of the guild leaders on Twitter too. Like, I can very confidently say the way that TIFF is run is going to be very different than the way that Juice Gaming is run. Is going to be very different than the way that Pioneers of Pixel is going to be run.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the guilds right now are getting started by some of like the more prominent like Pixels players, which is great because they have
Totally.
all of their tweets and stuff online. Like you can get a feel of how they might run the guild as well, and that might be important for you. I would personally, if I'm giving advice, like I would say pick a guild where you feel like you might be friends with them, where you might hang out because
Yes.
it's gonna be like pretty social, right? Like they're gonna have their own discords. There are ERC level 55s that we give these guild owners and like the guilds as well too. So like you'll get to see some like token gated discords as well. We're excited about that. So like join one where you think you're gonna hang out with them. I would probably join one in your language, right? Like there's some Vietnamese guilds, there's some like Philippine guilds, there's some like Korean guilds too. So like probably work with a guild that you can communicate with easily. That's probably pretty important too, right?
Yeah, totally. I think it's all about like this guilds feature is really a social feature, right? It's giving communities access to and utility of like gameplay, right? Right now, a lot of guilds have been, or sorry, a lot of some guilds, they call themselves guilds, communities, whatever, in Pixels have been, partying on specific lands. They might have their own Discord. They hang out together. They spend quality time together. So guilds is really like a way of giving them the access to gameplay features on top of all of that social, right? So I would highly recommend just hopping into the community and getting a feel for what kind of community and culture suits you best and then joining those ones.
Mhm. Oh, so some people, I think this is a big important part too. So a change in chapter 2 coming is right now on a spec, you can only place down 4 plots of soil, right? That's actually changing completely in chapter 2. And we'll work with like people who already have land decorated to figure out like what this looks like. But essentially, you'll be space constrained now, so you'll be able to place as many plots of soil as you can fit on a land and spec. That's why there's upgrades to also make them bigger. So yeah, I think some of the changes we might need to make to land is like we might need to make it so you can place industries and other things on top of some of the decorations. Like for example, some of you have like all I think Cloud White has like all white tiles on this land, and that's really cool. We want to keep that going. So we'll probably have him be able to place soil on top of those all white tiles. I don't think you can do that right now. But yeah, basically that's a huge change. So if you have a spec, you'll be able to have more than 4 plots of soil on your land. You'll be able to have more than one industry on your land. Those hard caps on industries placed and on plots of soil are going to get removed in chapter 2.
Cool. Awesome. All right. I think we can wrap it up. Is there anything last minute you really wanted to cover? I think we covered a lot of good stuff today.
Oh yeah, somebody asked about taxes on
Good
lands.
one.
Yeah, that's gonna be something that comes either if not right at chapter 2, like a little bit after. But yeah, basically a landowner or a guild, we have to decide if we want to be from the land or the guild owner. We'll be able to place a tax on top of their guild land as well. So essentially how that works is like the guild will get to decide if they want to do the resource distribution on their land themselves. So what they might do is they might have like a 100% tax on their land, or basically anything you farm on the guild land goes to the guild, and the guild decides how to distribute it. Or they might have no tax, and it's just like, this is my guild land. Whoever comes here gets what they farm. So we're going to leave that up to the guild. The whole point of what we're trying to do here is we want it to be very open-ended so the guilds can decide how they want to run things. We basically just want to give you guys the tools and the scarcity and the resource generation and like the pixel tasks associated with all of this to kind of create the best incentive structure. But again, like the whole point here is we actually don't want optimal meta. We want a lot of different like metas and like a lot of different strategies to form. And we kind of want to like throw a wrench in that meta a good amount too. So things might change, gameplay might like mess or be a bit different as well. So yeah, that's kind of the idea here. Like we want to give you tools to have like an open-ended game. We want the possibilities to be a lot more interesting than they currently are in the existing gameplay right now. It's gonna be crazy, but it's gonna be fun. So bear with us as we make all these changes. But we really do think this will make the gameplay more fun in the long run, and this is kind of the whole point.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to quickly recap. So we've got guilds releasing possibly this week or early next week. And when we say guilds releasing, we're talking about shards memberships. Okay. In early April, we don't have an exact date yet. That's when chapter 2 will come. That's when resource tiering, spec upgrades, those different things will come into play. Someone's asking what's the main differences between specs and NFT land. So that basically you can think of them as like almost 5 different tiers, sizes of lands, right? So specs will have 3 upgrades, and then there's small NFT lands and large NFT lands. These ones will provide different resources on top of NFT lands having their different resources depending on their land type, right? Those are kind of the main differences, I would say. And also all the guild features are you're only able to use NFT lands for all of that. So I would say that's it for the most part. So yeah, lots coming. We've got the party tomorrow. Make sure you're there, 5 p.m. Pacific. Look at my Discord announcement for your time zone. And I think we can wrap it up there.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for everybody
Awesome.
joining us. Yeah, this is like a pretty critical time inside of Pixels. So Guild's coming soon, Chapter 2 coming very soon too. These are gonna be the biggest changes that we've been working on for the last like 6-7 months. Yeah, it's really, really exciting. This has been like a huge team effort to get here. And yeah, we're really excited about what this opens up for the future of Pixels too. So yeah, thank you so much for everybody coming to this AMA. We'll continue to be active in Discord and on Twitter, so feel free to just like ask more questions, tag us on Twitter. We see it.
Wonderful. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.